Action! Welcome to another exciting episode. This is episode number 22 as we embark on another journey here with our new releases. This week we'll be reviewing Beast, starring Idris Elba. And we have two other streaming films to review as well. Look Both Ways, starring Lili Reinhart, And then the third film is Orphanfirstkill, which is the prequel to the original Orphan, if you couldn't figure that out.
Couldn't figure that out.
Yeah. I got some interesting facts on Orphan too as well. So we'll get on to that. But first, so Pete, let's get right into it. Beast. What do you have for me?
Well, Beast had a great premise, great trailer. Idris is always great. I mean, let's get that right. Let's start with some positives. Okay, like in terms of the shots, there was several like really just long take shots that were really beautiful. Showed a lot of like the landscape, and it really kind of got you immersed in this film. Definitely a thriller. A lot of suspense, tension.
Yeah, it's a good old fashioned like survival film.
Sure. I mean, Idris versus a lion. I mean,
man versus nature.
However, I almost wanted it to be sort of more low budget in a way. Like, I think at the end of the day, I only wanted it to be Idris versus a lion. I don't know. I just found myself getting really just kind of annoyed with the family. I thought the family caused a lot of unnecessary problems that otherwise just,
I think that's a lot of families, Pete.
Well, I mean, just like like one ridiculous moment was when Idris has to go and search for the lion to make sure that nobody's going to die or anything, and he's like, "I'll be right back," and then the daughter's like, "You'll be back," just like you said Mom would be back before she died. And it's just like, oh my God, like you want to talk about this now? Like this lion's going to kill us, and you want to talk? It just,
I would agree with some of that stuff. Yeah, some of the I guess the added tension was unnecessary. Like you're saying, it's just how realistic it is on some of those parts. I agree.
It took away from the film itself. It was unnecessary, and it almost felt like, instead of doing a lower budget sort of one-on-one, man versus beast kind of film, it's like, well, we have to add this family. And so let's add some scenarios where we can try to build tension. But meanwhile, it didn't. It's almost like they needed something to happen real fast. And so they just wrote something. And I don't know. I mean, it was fine. It's a good movie, and it's suspenseful. It's action packed. And I definitely recommend going and seeing it if you've already seen all the other films that are currently out. I just thought they could have done more.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, what I enjoyed of this film is I definitely enjoyed some of the simplicity of it. Again, sometimes, and this might slightly contradict you, but it's not really. But sometimes just the plot itself can kind of veer away from what this really is. And, again, at the very heart of it, this is a man versus nature film. It's a survival film, and it's, our best versus your best. And throughout the circumstances, how are you going to deal with it, and what are you going to do to survive, when shit hits the fan. And so I definitely think on that level, the film definitely hit. And I really liked this different character that he was. This is not your traditional kind of Idris Elba. He was definitely felt a little bit more vulnerable, less heroic in this film. He made poor choices. He, his backstory had some issues. But it was good. I liked it because I just enjoyed seeing Idris Elba act the hell out of it. You know what I mean? And again, a lot of the roles that I've seen him in, he's a lot more powerful and dominant. In this film, he wasn't. It was you're catching his character at a very weak point, and there's not a lot of times where he is like the heroic one, and he really kind of has to work his way back up. And so I enjoyed that aspect of it because
I appreciated that as well.
Yeah. but yeah, I agree with you. Although I would say the CGI in general I thought was decent. There's definitely a few shots that were a little rough, but I thought in general though it was well shot. And the VFX team I thought did a good job. I don't know how much obviously the budget was for them on that specific on VFX. So the budget of Beast was 36 million. So,
Right.
when you're talking some of these bigger VFX films, that's not a lot. That's not a big budget. But I'll tell you the other aspect I did enjoy is, there's not a ton of films like this in terms of like we don't necessarily get to see tons of like the African safari. You know what I mean? I mean, you maybe get one every 5 years or so, and so I enjoyed kind of the newer scenery and newer kind of territory where we get to kind of explore this because we just don't get to see it very often, and so
Sure,
that part,
visually stunning. I mean, it's
yeah,
beautifully shot, and yeah, I mean, the landscape is great. I just thought this. I mean, the story could have been super great. I thought it was good. I just think that they had a couple of opportunities that
yeah, I
they
think
could have
that's
sort
fair.
of, they could
Yeah, I
have,
mean it
yeah,
and this puck is obviously coming in after the box office numbers, and so unfortunately, it only made 11 million domestically, so it's probably going to get right around breaking even on its theatrical release, which unfortunately isn't great news. Dragon Ball, which we did not review by the way, Dragon Ball Super. I mean, that's not our world. I have no idea on that world, so we didn't check that out. But that one actually won the box office this week, and so Beast came in second. And so it's got an uphill battle, but maybe overseas it can kind of pull its money in,
right.
hopefully. But if it sounds like obviously a lot of people didn't see it this weekend, but I would. It's a slower. You're kind of getting the slower period, so I definitely still recommend people go check it out. I think it's worthwhile. I found it entertaining,
Sure,
very
me
minimum.
too.
If you can kind of enjoy the popcorn flick survival film, I think that's where this kind of falls in. Like you're saying, this isn't going to win the Oscar on any of that stuff, but I think it's entertaining. And if you like Idris Elba and some of his other work, I think this is another good piece on his resume. So
Yeah, and anytime you can see Idris versus a lion, and then he punches the lion,
yeah,
sign me up for sure.
yeah, absolutely, awesome. Okay, so yeah, our next film. This is on Netflix, and it's like I mentioned, Look Both Ways, and this is a kind of an alternate reality type of a film where it's basically here's a point of inflection. If this happens, then what is my life going to look like? If this happens, what is my life going to look like? And I thought it was a good concept, and I actually I actually enjoyed it a lot. This the film in terms of thematically really deals about kind of dealing with real life problems, but then also still at the same time trying to figure out a way to kind of live your dreams and really chase after what will make you happy. And so, for me as an artist, as a filmmaker, this is my wheelhouse, and so I think people that are dealing with that kind of struggle, I think will enjoy that journey that this character goes on.
Hmm.
And but I will say this: I think ultimately this film is going to skew more on the female audience. There is a word for that. Some may call it a chick flick. We are not calling that a chick flick here on the Action Podcast. But I would say it skews more towards a female audience. Now, I do think this is probably a solid date movie. But if you're one of those like hyper masculine guys that you don't really have a high tolerance for largely female driven things, this could be a rough go for you. But again, I actually enjoyed it. I thought I really enjoyed Lili Reinhart. I thought she actually did a really good job, and I think she's got a bright future. She's on Riverdale. I'm not familiar with her work, but I really liked her as a kind of comedic romantic comedy type of an actress. I think she's got a bright future, so I think definitely look
Yay.
out for her. And again, this is on Netflix, so I recommend checking it out if you have that kind of date night, or again, like um, you can even watch it with your kids if you got like teenagers. I think it's
Huh,
appropriate.
okay.
It's a college age, or right after college age, so early 20s type of age group, and so, but I think it's a TV 14, which is essentially a PG 13 film, the equivalent. So nothing obscene. The language I think was moderate, nothing crazy, nothing terrible, but a little bit. So that's pretty much my review on that.
Okay.
And then our last film, Pete, is the prequel to Orphan called Orphan First Kill. Now, I do want to preface a couple things. So I never saw the original Orphan, and so obviously I kind of want to be prepared before I started to see this. And so I watched the original first, which, by the way, that's going to be the starter. You need to watch the first one. The second one is absolutely crazy spoiler if you don't see the first one. So if you're gonna hop in on this journey, you gotta watch the first one first. So this is not one where you could skip, and too many spoiler alerts on watching the second one with that. So so with that being said, and if you like thrillers and kind of like The Omen or um, what was the one with the single white female?
See, my comp for these two movies, and I don't have. I'll just say it. I don't have positive reviews of these ones, but it's almost like The Good Son, if you remember that movie.
Yes, that was the other one.
With Macaulay Culkin and
What's the other one with Rebecca De Mornay? Something.
Oh,
Don't
that's
let the don't let the baby sleep, or
original
Hand That
one.
Rocks the Cradle.
And the Rocks the Cradle. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, so when the original one came out, I really thought that there was going to be a lot of like, wow, like a lot of like really jumpy moments. I thought it was going to skew a little bit more horror than just straight thriller.
Yeah.
I'm
I wouldn't call it a horror.
no, it not even close. I wouldn't even call it a thriller, to be honest, because it's just a straight story. There's no real jump moments. There's no real like there's not a lot of suspense. Like I could see when
There's
they
cringe mo I thought there was cringe moments on the first one.
a
There's
couple.
there was some cringe moments. I mean, uh, I think you have a higher tolerance than I think the average person. So I think if you're not into those films that we mentioned before, those kind of darker, almost satanic, you know character type of films, like this is definitely that realm. But I like I enjoyed the first one. Um, I don't think it's better than Good Son or those other films, but it's on Paramount Plus, so I thought it was worthwhile for the time I saw. I didn't regret the time I watched it. But the other interesting fact that I was alluding to earlier was it was that first film was produced by Leonardo DiCaprio and somebody else. But I was like,
Oh,
whoa,
really? I didn't know that.
yeah. So I was like, wow, okay, that's some big kind of hitters.
Well, after I saw the first one, I was like, okay, that was fine, whatever. And then when they announced that they were going to do a prequel to it, I was sort of taken aback a little bit. Like, what, who was asking for a prequel to
Oh,
this?
Joel Silver was the other guy.
Joel Silver. Okay, good.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, yeah, those are some heavy hitters. And then it
Okay,
starred Vera Farmiga and Peter Skarsgård. So I was like, okay,
good cast.
yeah. So I thought it was a single. Like you're saying, in that genre, I thought it was a solid film.
Yeah, you would watch it once and you would probably enjoy yourself. It's
Yeah,
not something you would watch over and over again. And again, like I was saying, it's not even something that I would think that you would want to make another movie about. Like because the going back in time, um, they kind of already told you the majority of the film in the first film. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like you already knew the backstory going into it. It's just like now visually you're going to see it. I mean, there's a little bit of a twist and I won't spoil it.
yeah. Don't spoil it.
Um, there's a little bit of a twist there that was like, okay, well that made it interesting. But then at that point, the movie's almost over, and so that I felt like they just had to like cram a bunch of stuff into the ending.
Yeah,
Um,
it didn't have the same tension as the first one, for
no,
sure.
it just didn't have tension at all. And then the ending happened, and you're kind of like, all right, well, there you go. Well, at least I didn't go to the theaters and pay money for it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's maybe just a bad idea going into it. So I think it's almost an impossible task for the screenwriter. And now, again, I think when you're dealing in this world, you know, it's a genre film, right? So I think you are just trying to hit singles here.
Yeah.
But I just, yeah, I think it was just an impossible task, and you're just kind of hoping maybe, the person loved the audience will love the character from the first one, and just go along for the journey. But yeah, I'm with you. This one, like I said, I tolerated slash, you know, could make it through the first one and thought it was a solid film in that realm. But the second one, yeah, I just thought it was just too many things lacking. Like you're saying, the twist definitely made it, I think, slightly edible, but at the same time, like you're saying, it took a long time to get there, and then like it was just very kind of like ho hum before that,
Yep.
and
I
again,
was
just
just
didn't have
thinking
the
ho
same
hum.
tension. What'd you say?
I was just thinking ho hum.
Yeah, ho hum, ho hum. So
Same.
yeah, so I'd say check it out at your own. Again, it's on Paramount Plus, so it's not going to cost you anything. If you're into that genre, I think it might be worth the roll of the dice. But this is not a genre breaking film or anything
No.
that's gonna.
I will say, just I know you didn't announce this at the beginning, but I love documentaries, and I watched the documentary "The Princess" about Princess Diana.
Oh well, I haven't watched that yet.
Fantastic. I mean, it really does give you a good insight into sort of how she came to be a part of the royal family and everything she went through, which is just
Yeah.
nuts. But they show like these old clips of her face and her eyes where you can almost like sense that she knew she was in trouble from like the very beginning. Like it just the way they did the documentary, you can just tell
Yeah.
that that was sort of the point of it, was that she almost sort of foresaw this sort of disaster sort
Yeah.
of happening, and sort of the impact that she had globally. I know that our mother especially loves Princess Di, but I
Yeah.
didn't really understand the significance of her, and like how she just touched everybody in the world. So I
Yeah.
bring that up only because coming soon is there's a I think it's on Netflix, but it's a documentary about John McAfee,
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
it's supposed to be pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw the trailer for it, and it looks really good because
Yeah. We interviewed him back in the day at Valuetainment.
yeah,
So
I'm
there was an
way
interesting
into that.
story there. So yeah, he's a character. And then, so speaking of documentaries, and we'll end it on this. But yeah, so the Manti T'eo, the girlfriend that didn't exist documentary was also released on Netflix, and I checked that one out, and yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
Which one was this?
The Manti T'eo story, the one where he basically got catfished, and
Oh,
there's a person that pretended to be his girlfriend, and ultimately then said his girlfriend died, and then they found out the girlfriend didn't exist.
right, right, right.
So yeah, most people know like of the story, but you get a lot more details, and then there's stuff. I'm not gonna give it away because it was just like, wait, what? So like almost in the beginning, there's kind of a twist that leads which just makes the story that much more interesting. And so if you're, I think football players or people that are into sports, I think it's a great documentary. Very very interesting story if you remember it happening. But I mean, Manti Te'o was such a beast, and then this really did not help his career. Now, ultimately, he was a solid football player, and injuries ultimately, ended his career. So I wouldn't say this incident ended his career, but at the end of the day, you know, he this did not help. And again, it's just when you see all the timeline stuff and then hear all the backstory stuff, it's a fun, interesting ride. I guess fun's the wrong word, but it's a
Well, check it out tonight.
interesting ride. So I highly
Yeah.
recommend checking it out.
And what we're going to be checking out later this week, because opening on Friday, you've got a couple of movies in the theater, not big movies, but certainly interesting. You have
Yeah.
the Invitation,
Mm-hmm.
which looks suspenseful, looks
Yeah.
fun. You also have Samaritan coming out with
Right.
Sylvester Stallone. I'm kind of curious
And
about
then the
that.
1,000 years.
There's 3,000 Years of Longing.
Yeah, and that's a George Miller, and George Miller is he's the guy that did Sin City and all that, right?
With Idris, our man.
Yeah, yeah. So that I'm looking forward to that one.
And then on Netflix, new Mark Wahlberg film called Me Time,
Oh, right, with Kevin Hart, right?
described as the female road comedy in the same vein as Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, wow.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, that will actually probably be our number one film next week. I mean,
That looks good.
yeah, your two biggest stars are on that one. So yeah, we'll
We
be
got some work to do.
Yeah, and then in our revisiting aspect of our podcast, we have ET on tap later this week, and then the following week we have Back to the Future, and then Goonies on tap as well. So we got a nice action-packed lineup on the Action Podcast. So stay tuned, guys. Thanks for joining us today, and make sure you comment and subscribe and like our podcast. We're on the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all the major podcast networks. And then you can also catch us here on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe. And thanks again. And cut. Thanks, guys.